Hello there, and welcome to the I Never Knew podcast, also known as Inc. This show dives into the life experiences of people who have been through it all and have come through the other side stronger, better, and triumphant. Each story is raw, authentic, and, at times, heartbreaking. One thing joins it all together: the fact that the stories can help the listener learn and grow. Hosted by life coach Maureen, she sits down each episode with a new guest who will empower the listener to set out on their self-discovery journey and start to heal. Now you'll be joined by Maureen and her special guest. Please enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of I Never Knew, or Inc. by Life Coach Maureen. So happy to have all of you here. I hope you're all subscribing, leaving wonderful 5-star reviews, and sharing everything with your friends. Because if you're not, they're going to miss fabulous guests, such as my guest today, Taylor James. I reached out to Taylor. I was so excited to talk to Taylor. He's my hashtag goals for podcasting. So Taylor has his own podcast, which is absolutely fabulous. And he, he hosts a award-winning mental health and well-being podcast, and it's called the Waffle Shop Podcast, which is the coolest name. And he'll explain why he called it that. Taylor launched his podcast in 2020 after a life-changing event left his mental health in pieces. Taylor has turned his pain into purpose and has waffled with the likes of Ed Sheeran, Sean Paul, Perez Hilton, and even Carol Baskin. Oh my goodness. More recently, Taylor launched a brand new podcast with his co-host Emma called Waffle Shop Unfiltered. This new spinoff is an opportunity to take the conversation further, exploring a wide range of weird, wonderful, and potentially controversial subjects, which is my favorite thing, controversial subjects. I love podcasting because you can talk about anything you want. And without further ado, hi, Taylor, and welcome.
That was one of the nicest introductions I think I've ever had. Honestly, it is an honor to be here. Thank you for having me.
I love it. So we were talking beforehand, and instantly, I always know you have this synchronicity with people. What is that thing that they say, you know, when you have this soul family, you just know, you're like, oh, yeah. It's not nice to meet you. It's, oh, there you are again. Great to see you.
It's like I've spoke to you before. It's like literally, I'm just sat I'm in the pub with my mate having a beer. And this is what it feels like straight away. As soon as it was literally like 2 seconds in, I was like, yep, this is going to be good.
And I love it when you appreciate the high level of energy that I have, because I cannot help myself. I always say, if you can't handle the truth, I don't sugarcoat, go eat a donut. So here we are. So what we always do is we start with your story, and your story is so touching to me and amazing. And when our listeners hear what you went through, I think they're all going to really resonate these struggles that you experienced. So tell us from the beginning, really, what kind of opened these doors to mental health awareness.
This is going to be a lot of information in a very short period of time. So if it's a lot of waffle, just give me a shout, just like slow it down a little bit. But yeah, a couple of years ago, I nearly lost my mom to an operation that went horribly wrong. In a matter of hours, my life was literally turned upside down. I kind of had to take care of my younger sister. I was going to the doctors and the hospitals every day, and they were telling me things like, your mom's going to be brain dead, like basically my mom isn't going to make it, she's going to die. And in the kind of process of, like, it was well over a year of this happening, and it kind of got to a stage where I had nothing left to give the situation. Like, I was trying to be a son, I was trying to be a big brother, I was trying to be like a grandson, a nephew, and I was giving so much out that, because I was kind of trying to play the hero in a weird way. Like, us men are weird like that. Like, we don't need the help, we don't need this. But it got to this one day. I'm still trying to work out why this happened the way it did. But I was sat down again uh in the doctor's waiting room, and I was told like mom isn't going to make it, and there's nothing more they can do. Basically, it's down to her now whether she pulls through. And I just remember getting up out the seat, leaving the hospital, and just standing there and just being like, I don't want to be here. And it wasn't a case of like I didn't want to be here, as in like I wanted to die. It was more of a case like I didn't want to continue my life the way it was being lived. Now, I say it quite candidly now, but you kind of speaking about the journey and stuff like that, like I realize how much of an impact it's had on my life. And I'm hoping someone listening to this who may resonate with it, but there is always help out there. There is always someone to reach out to, whether you think there is or there isn't. There genuinely, my best, if it wasn't for my best friend and my sister, I dread to think where I would be. And there's a quote that my friend said to me when everything was going on, when I really opened up, and it was, I'd rather be listening to you rant or reading your text messages moaning than reading something out at your funeral. And it has stuck with me, even on the bad days now, that I'm like, okay, you can do this. Like you got through that patch. You can, you can basically, you can do anything, but one thing you can't do is give up. Um, Luckily, my mum is still here. She's incredibly resilient, stubborn cow bag of a woman. But I love her. She gives me hell on a daily basis. And she's the backbone of everything that I do now. She was a very fit, like late 40s woman when this happened. And she's now in a a neurological care home, learning how to like use her hands to speak, potentially walk again. And she's just this incredible force of like, you're not defined by your situation, by your mental health, by your physical health. Like you can still go on and achieve some incredible things. So that's kind of in a nutshell the story of how the kind of waffle shop started. Because if I hadn't started talking about how I was feeling, I genuinely dread where I would be. For some
Oh,
bizarre reason, I thought it'd be a good idea to talk into a microphone and record it all. But
you
I wouldn't be
know,
sat here if I didn't.
right, right. And we never know what method works for us. So whether it's journaling or it's just reaching out to a community on Facebook, this is why I love technology today. I can talk to you in a whole nother country and feel like I'm in the room with you and I can hug
Yeah,
you virtually. And, that's what you said. You feel so alone, but it's podcasts like mine and yours that say, let's talk about it. And then other people go, I've
yeah,
been there. I'm in that situation, or this is what I did. I find that finally we're doing sort of this human connection, that it's okay
definitely.
to talk about this stuff, because really the generations prior, my generation, I call it the unsupervised generation, we didn't talk about it, we didn't address feelings,
Yep,
we didn't sit down and have dinner, we didn't have mental health days, it just wasn't happening. And now the beauty is it is happening. And to
yep,
be able to do these podcasts, you needed an outlet. You found an outlet,
definitely.
whether people go running or they start a new sport, or creativity. For me, creating things is really
Yeah.
important. That's a good outlet.
And
So,
I think this is what really kind of threw me kind of like off course with everything, because when I first started reaching out, I was very lucky to get therapy very, very quickly. But it was generic like meditate, go for a run, go for a walk. And don't get me wrong, they are incredible coping mechanisms if they work for you. They're phenomenal. Like journaling, you mentioned it, like that's a big one for me. Whereas I didn't realize that sitting in front of a microphone would be that coping mechanism, like for me. And I think until you kind of try it, like you need to stick with it, because I feel like we're in this kind of generation, like people will try things once and then, oh, it didn't work, so I'm never trying that again. Whereas I've learned the hard way of like being consistent with yourself, like the same way as you would go to the gym, the same way as like you would go to work. You need to be consistent with yourself, with your well-being, with your mental health, whatever it might be. like you need to give yourself a chance, and the best way you can do that is make yourself like a priority.
Yes. And to be willing to say, hey, this doesn't work for me. It may work for you, but I'm going to try something
Yeah.
else over here. It's funny. I reunited with a girlfriend from high school about 3 years ago. And I said, oh, this is what I'm doing now. I'm life coaching and I wrote these books. And she goes, of course you are. And I go, what do you mean? And she said, you've been doing this your whole life, Maureen. And I was like, what? I was like having a bad childhood. I was in a domestic violence marriage. I was having a rough life. And while I was doing that unaware, I was helping others, and it brought me joy to do that. And I didn't even, it was subconscious. It was completely not a conscious effort. So I wanted to be a therapist. And then I took some counseling courses when my kids were babies. Stupid idea. That lasted all of 3 weeks. I think I got a C. We were overseas living in Germany at the time in the military. And yeah, I failed that miserably. I mean, like, who has time with a newborn and a 2-year-old? Hello, let me take a class, let me get my degree.
One of your best ideas.
Timing is everything, Maureen. Hello. So, I always had this will and this need and this purpose to help others. And to start the life coaching business, I'm in my 5th year. When someone approached me and said, hey, have you heard about life coaching? I'm like, what is this life coaching thing? Read the description and went, hold on a second. I've been doing that. I need to make money at that. And the beauty of life coaching is I don't have anything against traditional therapy or coaching or counseling, but I do believe by not being regulated here in the States, we're not regulated, so we don't need a license. And we are allowed to bring our past experiences along with, I think, balancing my life experience and my education brings so much to my clients, and we get to think outside the box. I've asked people to do silly things, Taylor. I've had people roll down their window and yell outside, I'm amazing. It's that we get to try different things.
You would be more inclined to go to someone who had lived through what you're going through, like who have lived through that pain, who is now turning that pain into purpose. Like you wouldn't go, like you see it online now. Like I'm not taking digs at life coaches here at all, because for a certain period of time, like I had one. Whereas there's these people who are like turning like 19, 20 and are life coaches. I mean, I'm not taking digs. It's everyone, some of them are very, very good at what they do, but I'm just thinking like, this might be saying I'm very judgmental, but like, and I'm not kind of taking away from anyone's like experience or anyone's life experience, but I can't take life coaching off someone who hasn't lived.
Yes, 100%.
So people like you, I'd be more inclined, like, yeah, you've lived the experience, you've turned in that pain into a purpose. And regardless, straight away, the first lesson that I've picked up from you is that just because you went through those horrible things, you haven't let it define who you are. Yeah. So again, I'm like, well, this is an incredible, strong, resilient woman. Of course, I'm going to want to obviously learn from her experiences.
I am not offended one bit. I agree with you 100% because, it's a trendy thing. Let me be a life coach. But I had a friend who said they went to a marriage counselor one time, and it was a 25-year-old just out of college. And they said, well, have you ever been married? And she said, no. And they got up and walked out,
Yeah.
And you got to know as a life coach, what is your niche? This is a good story, and I don't mean to make it about me here, but this is a really good story. When I started life coaching, I made sure I stayed in my wheelhouse. Although I defined myself very limiting, and I'm like, I know bad relationships. I am definitely an expert in relationships. But there were other things that I was like, well, I don't really know business. How can I business coach? And then I had to look at it and go, wait a minute. You have been in corporate for 28 years. You've been a supervisor. You know how to help employees. You know how to problem solve. Then I started my business, and I still, believe it or not, was like, I don't know if I could business coach. Now I'm like, wow, you are so well-rounded, Maureen, in business and knowing more than you ever knew before. Why are you limiting yourself? I agree with you. Stay in your wheelhouse. Stay in what you know. So they say that the niche that you should find is where's your passion, where's your knowledge, and where's your experience. That's how you find your niche. If you don't have knowledge of something, I'm not going to, I do coach a lot of males, but I'm certainly not going to be like, I'm a life coach for males with erectile dysfunction. You know, like that's not, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a male. And I have no, you
lived
know,
experience with that one.
right?
It's like,
Even though I was in the medical field for 28 years, that's not enough for me to come and say, and
yeah,
oh God, I shouldn't be, hey,
you play
Taylor.
to your strengths. You play to your
Right.
strengths.
You really have to. I told you I'd lighten this up. So Taylor, how's it going with your ED? No, I really have to like,
Well, I'm
even,
glad you asked.
so that's a whole nother subject here. What do you guys think about the medical field and men and women's problems? Okay. We see, I told you I would sidebar, but I agree with you. And I'm so happy that you said that. And I always wondered why I went through what I did. And I know a lot of people disagree. A couple of my podcast guests are like, I don't believe in everything happens for a reason. And what I went through was for my good. And I get that. I get that. But when you try to understand the big picture, it's like when I started this business at 45 years old, without that 45 years of pain and suffering and fixing and understanding, how could I sit in front of you and be like, hey, I know how to do this. I did this. Doesn't mean it's going to work for you, but how about you try this? See if that works. So thank you for saying that. And that's not offensive.
No, but I'm also going to completely disagree with your guests that you've had on who have said that, because I feel like you do need to be exposed to certain relationships, environments, like life-changing events, jobs, relationships, whatever it might be, to either make you realize what you don't want, make you realize what you deserve, and make sure that you're not kind of going through the same thing over and over again. So I do believe everything does happen for a reason, because if that hadn't have happened to my mom, I wouldn't be sat here having this conversation with you. I wouldn't have had the career that I have now. Like, I wouldn't have anything if it wasn't for that. So I do disagree with that. I do think things are put in front of your path, and I think a lot of people don't realize that we have the power to kind of use those experiences or whatever it might be as stepping stones, rather than kind of things that are put in place to stop us from moving forward. So, I mean, I'm not sitting here all like pointing the finger like, no, you need to do this, you need to that at all, because I have days when I'm like, I can't be bothered. I'm not doing this. Like, life's hard. I don't want to get off, kind of thing. But there's days then when I've like, even conversations like this, I'm like, it's a kick up the arse to be like, no, like, this is not going to beat you. Like, you're not going to be defined like that. And I know it's difficult, and I know everyone's in different kind of situations, but you deserve to be happy. You're here once, and regardless of your mental health, your situation, relationship, job, like family, you are put on this planet to be nothing but happy, regardless of what you think.
Yes. Preach it. And I think there's a definitive line between everything happens for a reason and everything happens for my good. And so my belief is, this is how I follow it, because a lot of my guests will say, no, I wish that didn't happen. Whereas I think it's, where are you in your healing process of gratitude for what happened?
Yeah.
And I am like, now I can look back and people can be like, what do you mean you're grateful you had domestic violence? How can you say that, Maureen? But I can, because now I can see the signs. Now I can help others. Now I can reach out. People can reach out to me. So was I glad at the time? Absolutely not. And I think everything is going to be hindsight 2020. You know, maybe not right now. You're not grateful for something that happened last week, but I can say I'm grateful for something that happened 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful now that I get to bring that forward. When my ex-husband, we were going through a divorce. No, we weren't going through a divorce yet, but I was in the process of divorcing him. So he was an alcoholic, and he was definitely domestic violence, physically abusive, and he cheated on me. Funny thing is, I put up with all the domestic violence and all that alcoholism until the cheating. And then like the line in the sand was like, oh, you cheated on me, but you can beat me and you can ignore me and drink yourself into a stupor. Dumb, almost killed me. But I remember sitting with my daughter's best friend's mom. Her and I were friends. And I remember sitting in the backyard, just bawling my eyes out, just sobbing. And I said, it's like he took my heart out and he stomped on it in the dirt and he ripped it to shreds and he handed it back to me. And I said in that moment, Taylor, but if I have to go through this to help someone else, I will. Like, where did that come from? That was,
Yeah.
I wasn't grateful at the moment for sure.
Yeah.
And I didn't know I would be grateful for it later. But the fact that it obviously was in me to say, somehow my soul said, you're going to be okay. You're going to use this later, out of nowhere, out of despair. You at the hospital walking out and saying,
No, but you know what?
I don't want to do this
you give
anymore.
me goosebumps saying this, but we got approached by, because obviously with everything that happened with my mom, like obviously it was quite the case. Everyone kind of got involved in like our local city. And obviously because there was like a level of like negligence there and this, that, and the other. So we kind of got approached by like TV, like people like wanted to hear, because this doctor had done the same thing to like other people, and unfortunately they hadn't made it. And mine and my sister's approach to kind of being part of those conversations was, if this stops this from happening to another family, like we were kids, like, well, I'm not a kid, but I was in my like mid-20s like when it happened, and my sister was 16. So it was just like, if we can stop this from happening to another family or another 16-year-old or someone like who is my age, then we'll be part of the conversation. So yeah, I don't know. I agree with what you're saying. It's bizarre how those kind of, in those kind of really painful experiences and those moments, it kind of, you find your purpose in a weird way.
Isn't that crazy? It'll come out of nowhere. And I think that's it's just that intuitive thing where you get, I feel like you get spoken to by whatever people believe is a higher power for them, or even if they don't. But I feel you're given these things, this information where you don't even know where it comes from. And you're like, where the heck did that come from? I was just in Boston last week, and they had a little market place. I stayed right across from the Boston Public Library, which is a work of art if you ever visit Boston. And they had a little market, and I bought some doggy treats at the market. And I don't know where the intuition came, but by the time I got home, I said, I'm starting a business with doggy treats, because my whole brand is about dogs. And we already have we're getting the website up. We've already this is like 48 hours later, and I've already got the recipes. I've got the packaging. So it's like, do we listen to the intuition? So your intuition, when you were going through all of that, Taylor, what did you, I love to see when we're in those profound moments. I love to ask guests, did you see that thing like later, like, I'm going to be there. I don't know how, but I'm going to be there. Was there this profound, here's what has to happen going forward for me?
Do you know what? I think it was when that first episode, when I released the first episode of the podcast, because it was the first time, because we felt like we couldn't talk about what had happened, because every time you bumped into someone, it was like, oh, how's your mum doing? How's your mum? So there was an element of guilt that I was feeling, that I can't talk about how I'm feeling because of my mum, kind of thing. But when that first episode went out, the amount of comments, the amount of messages, like it just completely overwhelmed me, of like thank you for talking, like if you ever need someone, like it showed me a lot of support that was out there. But it also got a lot of people in touch with me to say, like, this happened to me when I was like 17, 18. I didn't realize there was other people out there that this had happened to. Some of them that I actually went to school with. So it was like a real kind of eye opener. And I think that for me was like the turning point, to be like, well, actually, you don't know the impact you're having just by having these kind of honest, open and vulnerable conversations. And I think I never used to speak about anything. I used to kind of really kind of be very, very reserved. Whereas even now, like, I can go to my mom and have these conversations if I am having a bad day. The same with my sister. It's like, even like my friends, like my lad mates, I was sitting in the pub and we're not just having that conversation of like, oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, me too. It's like, oh, like my anxiety is bad, or I've had a really rough week, or this has upset me. And it was when all these kind of little things that were happening, it was like the ripple effect.
Yes.
It kind of turned the whole thing into like a bit of a waterfall. And I think that to me now, like, is just, you've got to keep going.
Yes.
Like I could have let this situation stop me in my tracks, and to a point it did. It very nearly kind of defeated me. Whereas the impact that it's had and the opportunities that it's created, and the fact that I'm sat here now, like 2 years on, a completely changed man. Like, I know what I want. Like, my confidence is on another level, not from like an arrogant way, but like, I now know who Taylor is, which before this situation happened, I didn't have a clue. I'd been to Thailand. I did that whole like, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna find myself. I'm gonna, figure out who I am. Came back even more confused than when I went. And it wasn't until this happened and the waffle shop and kind of connecting with the people that I have connected with now that has really made me think like, yeah, this you're on the right track. This you've got to keep going.
And what I heard was, that guilt that you held and being a conservative Brit, you were probably raised to, to not really speak of that stuff, just like I was raised not really to speak of that stuff. And what's cool is I just had a vision when you were talking is the cups with the balls and they're all switched around. And even though you went to Thailand, but the ball wasn't under that cup, you know what I mean? And sadly, your loved one, your mom had to go through what she did for the ball to be under that cup. But this is the beauty of the mental health awareness now. I love that we are allowed to just open the door for people who wouldn't open the door, who are standing on the other side of the door. And they're like, can you just crack a door? And what I heard was the guilt of you trying to be so strong for everyone, your sister and your mom, and take care of the finances and the house and all that stuff. Suddenly you're like, hey, I matter too. Hey, people care about what I'm going through.
Yeah.
And so as humans, what do we all want? Acceptance and validation. And when you found that ball under the cup with the podcast, you're like, damn, I get acceptance and validation. It doesn't mean it diminishes what you're doing with your family, but it's like, hey, you matter too, because your tank was empty and you had to refill it. So I just, I love it.
Honestly, it's like, and but it's true. And it's like, it doesn't, and I genuinely mean this, because if the podcast that ended tomorrow, it is, for me, it's done what I need to do. I was always kind of weirdly looking for kind of approval from like my parents and stuff, and to have like my mom and my dad now say like they're proud of me, that's it for me. Like the awards and the guests and stuff like that, like, yeah, it's all great. It all sounds great. It all sounds very flashy and like, oh, I've done this. But for me, it's changed my life. And it's kind of the very painful experience. It's kind of give it back to a lot of people. And I can't sit here and kind of take credit. But yes, I've kind of been the voice, but if that hadn't have happened to my mom, there's like hundreds of people that have benefited from like either me talking about this or the podcast and stuff like that, and none of it would exist if it wasn't for her. So I do need to, obviously she is the main, I do need to credit her every now and again.
It's just,
that's what, I just wanted to make a point of kind of, it doesn't have to be starting a podcast to make your voice be heard. Like literally reaching out to your friends. Like, it's so cliche, but talking really is like it's not the easiest thing to do, but it's the cheapest thing. I'm probably saying it to the wrong person because you're a life coach, but honestly, it's free to talk to your friends.
It is, and I'm going to counter that because you're honing in on my livelihood. But I'm going to just say this. It's all good. It is true. But I am going to say this, sometimes being able to reach out to a life coach, and the reason I think life coaching, well, let me just rephrase this. My life coaching in particular, I am that third party who's not your friend and not your family. And a lot of times we do go to our friends and family and they're like, well, I know you best, and I'm going to tell you what's best for you. What I find with my clients when they come for life coaching, you're going to be part of my family and you're going to be my friend. And I don't care if that's opposition to everybody, stay professional, blah, blah, blah. No, I'm professional, but I also care so dang much. Your success is mine. And I am emotionally attached to you and your success. And I make myself available as well, in between sessions. Cause I always say your problems don't have a schedule. You don't have to wait till next week to tell me something. So I'm available. Text me if you need something, if you're having a hard time, need a decision. So you're right. Those who want to really commit to a process of change, which is, I'm going to make you accountable. I'm going to set goals for you. I'm going to
exactly what people need,
right? Reinforce your strengths. I'm not going to let you fall back into your old patterns. family, it's great. It's a good start. I think it's a great start. And I hope family encourages friends and family to go further than that. But sometimes our friends and family do not have our best interest at heart. And they may think they know us. I learned we have 3 personas. We have what the world sees, what our family and friends see, and what we really are and who we really are. So you go to someone that's family and friends, that's a different persona. Who you really are, you're going to bring to a life coach who doesn't judge and doesn't know your past history. And we're going to be right on the surface and dig deep into why do you do these things? Why do you keep doing them? So,
and you know what? I'm going to second that purely because going through this process, I had to kind of cut 90% of my family off because of that exact reason. They didn't know who I was. They were kind of pointing fingers at me and making certain decisions. My mum trusted me to be next of kin, to be like power of attorney for a reason. She's still here, and I went tunnel vision because I knew my mum. My mum knew me. She trusted me. There was a lot of people who didn't. However, a lot of these people will kind of can't speak to you in a way because they think that they know you, but they're also so used to getting a certain version of you. And this is why I will back up what you're saying. Going to like a life coach, therapy, like those kind of like people, they will stop you seeing that kind of bullshit. You're going to these kind of people because you're sick of your own bullshit. If you go to people like your friends and your family, they are either going to tell you what you want to hear, or they're going to tell you what they want you to hear because they're so used to getting a certain version of you. So I will back you up as well with that because you don't also do not wait until the shit hits the fan to go to therapy or a life coach. There is no time scale. Go whenever you feel like you are ready to go.
And it's changed. It's ever changing. It's ever flowing. It's ebb and flow of life is, you may go, this is what I love the most. You may come for life coaching because you're having problems in your relationship. And then you find out, oh shoot, I need to work on like my business, or I need to work on the things that I really like to deep dive on are the false beliefs you have about yourself. And they're in there. You don't even know they're in there. You have these subconscious things that you just heard it, saw it, witnessed it, and you just went with it. And now it's ingrained in you. Here, you come to me, you've got 30, 20, 30, 40, 50 years even of these habits you don't even know you're doing. And then we deep dive and you go, oh, well, I can change that. And it's like,
do you think the pandemic did that for a lot of people? Because I'm very grateful. I mean, don't get me wrong, obviously it was devastating, but I'm very grateful of the pandemic because it made me stop. It made me stop and think, okay, who is Taylor? What do I want? What do I actually like doing? It wasn't until we were locked up in our house, I was like, well, I don't like this wallpaper, but it's been there for like 5-6 years. So it's that kind of like situations. I do find that
better the wallpaper than the people in the house. Oh, they've been here for 5 years. They got to go. But that happened too. That did happen. I had a lot of relationship coaching during COVID. No, I agree with you. It's devastating that lives were lost, but I think it was almost this unseen movement where it's like, all right, everybody, come back. Let's regroup. Let's slow down. Let's get rid of some distractions. You don't need to be in traffic. You can't go to a restaurant and get away from your people. It was like, this is the life you built, and the rose-colored glasses are coming off. Everything's coming off. And like, here you are raw and naked in your home with the people and the home and the life you built. What do you think about that? What do you think about yourself? It was figuratively and literally, let's go inside, guys, and let's reevaluate where we are.
It's like the Disney film Inside Out.
Yes.
Literally, that's how I feel like the pandemic hit me. Just that film.
And you found out really quickly if you were really happy with your life or if you were not happy with your life. I ended up having my daughter and my 2 granddaughters living with me during COVID, and man, did I love it. It was just everybody in the house having dinner together. We would take walks in the evening, and around our block, someone had set up a little box of like, take something or bring something. And the girls, they'd have like little crafts for the girls. I would bring my books and put my books in there, or canned goods, or someone had like candle. It was the funnest thing. I've never seen more of my neighbors than I have in COVID.
In COVID. It's true.
They were walking and riding bikes, and it was great. It was
like we went back to like the 50s or the 60s, weren't it?
I literally said that. I said, it's like
Yeah.
Andy Griffith time, right? You know, I was like, people are waving to each other. There was this little old couple
Yeah.
that would sit in lawn chairs in their front yard and wave to us, and we'd come through like a parade, you know, 2 kids, my husband, myself, 3 dogs. It was like, I loved it. I loved it. And I've maintained that since, saying, slow down. I make sure we have dinner
Yeah.
together. I'm now raising my 14-year-old grandson. It's like, I learned how to slow down, and I hoped that was what we got out of it. Look at the rivers and oceans were healthier, and the air was
Yeah.
better. Like,
Exactly. I mean,
right?
hello.
I know. And that's all it took was 1 year, guys, to clean up what we've been doing
Yeah.
and what we've been busy with, all the garbage on the inside and the outside. I think we just
Definitely.
did really well. And I think the mental health movement really got a big giant shove from behind, because
Forward. Definitely.
you had to reach out. You had to reach out when you weren't well. You couldn't go anywhere, and
Mhm.
you could do remote. So it was a good thing. It was a really, really good thing. And hopefully we don't need to repeat that with monkeypox or whatever. But
Oh God. I'll
we
do it
just need
again.
to hold on. Again, good things come from bad things. And this is one of those
Definitely.
things,
So
right?
the lotus flower.
Yeah.
It's a lotus flower. It literally surrounds itself with like rubbish, and it grows for like the like dirt into this incredible thing.
Yes.
I'm sure there's like a really nice saying in there somewhere. I'll probably completely just ruin that. But
No, I love it.
Google
You
a
know,
lotus flower.
I love the analogy. My husband hates my analogies, and I pictured a weed growing up in the concrete, you know, bloom where
Yeah.
you're planted. You know,
That's
it
the one.
doesn't look like an ideal environment, but you can grow if you want to.
Mhm.
Bad enough, you can push through and grow. So I just this conversation, like I want to make this like a 5-hour podcast, and my listeners would be like,
It's
okay,
like full of
alrighty.
Joe Rogan it.
seriously. And you'll probably be getting Joe Rogan on before I ever will. That's that you, because you're on a roll now. You know, I'll just you know, if you want to throw my name out to any of your celebrity people, that would be fine.
You know what? The biggest bit of advice I ever got when I started this podcast was, if you don't ask, you don't get.
Yes.
So
Yes.
why not reach out to these people? Because yes, don't get me wrong, I get a hell of a lot of no's, but when you get that one name come through, like, yep, we love what you do, we'd love to be involved. It's like, that's all it needed, was just that one yes.
Isn't that life right there? You just summed up life. Like, you just have to get on the roller coaster, and then the first time
doesn't
you
stop.
ride, it'll be scary, but you're going to want to go on it again. It's just,
Exactly.
you got to get over. It's almost like there's this invisible wall where I just can't get there. I can't get there. Getting out of my comfort zone, there's a fear. And then the minute somehow you get through that crack to the other side, you're like, oh, that wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if I were a terrible life coach and I would say to people a million times, I told you so, or yeah, I know, you know, but really underlying, it's what I'm saying is, trust me, trust the process. Just do it. Just get over that hump. I find now doing things that scare me is exciting. Like, I get
110%.
right?
And you summed it up like perfectly then, about like kind of pushing through the fear and kind of like, you want to do it again. I did my first ever live show. Like, for some bizarre reason, I sold out a show, but 2-3 days before, my mum got rushed back into hospital, and I was like, I'm not doing it. No chance. Like, my head is not going to be able to do it. But then my mum was like, you've got to do it. Like, regardless of what's going to happen with me, you can't control it. You've got to go and do the show. I did all of like the visuals for it, like 2 hours before I went on stage. I got there. I had minimal notes. I got there. It was a complete and utter blur. Everyone kind of had a good time. They took more money on the bar that night than they did in like a year. So it probably says a lot for my audience. And then afterwards, as much as I was exhausted, I was like, I need to do that again.
Yeah.
Like, I need to do it again. Like, it was the fear, it was the adrenaline, it was everything. I was like, I need more of this now. So yes, it's scary, and it's some situations are absolutely petrifying. But like you said about like the roller coaster, yes, it's going to be scary. Yes, you're going to scream, but guaranteed, like, once you're off it, you're going to want to do it all over again.
The other side of fear is empowerment. You know, one of my other guests had said, fear stands for face everything and rise. And it is.
Love that. I'm stealing that.
Yes, I stole it too. I'm
It's-
just I'm
Just the
paying
gift that
it.
keeps on giving.
Yeah, it is. I'm paying it forward because I love to pay it forward. So yeah, that's absolutely. And I find I have a saying that I say now. My husband giggles, but when I've done that, when I've pushed through something and something turned out really well, my favorite saying is "Yay me, yay me." You know, I did
Good.
this.
You should be, yeah. You should be proud of this kind of stuff.
Right. We don't do enough self-validation. We're always looking for everybody else to come in and say, "Oh, great job." I remember when I started my business. Now, my parents were very much not about mental health stuff, and
Yeah.
they think, fix thyself or take a pill. And I remember the first few years, especially after writing my book, my mom wouldn't read it. She was afraid of what was in there, like I was going to trash her. And then I was getting, awards, and I was getting, I got on TV and all that. And I remember going over there, and my mom said, I read your book. It was like 2 years later. And I said, yeah. And how did you like it? And she goes, it was really good. She says, surprisingly.
Supposed to sound surprised.
But what's funny is I looked for that validation for so
Yeah.
long. And then when she gave it to me, it was anticlimactic. I didn't need it anymore because I had gotten to
doing it
the
yourself.
level. Well, yeah, it was like, oh, I know it's good. I didn't need my mom and dad to do that.
Yeah.
And I knew that was that final moment of letting go of that codependent behavior that I had my entire life growing up. And it was like, I don't need you to validate me anymore. I got this. Yay me.
Yeah.
So
I'm stealing that as well.
see,
Maybe.
you just keep stealing it. Well,
Thank
you might have to pay me because you were trying to hone in on the life coaching thing with the friend thing, but
yeah, true. Yeah, sorry.
We'll
Gave
set
you
up
a job on that one.
a finder fee or a referral thing for you. But no, I'm just so proud of you. What I love also is that men are finally being welcomed into talking about their feelings and being emotional. Raising a 14-year-old grandson, and I have a son who's 24. Looking at my household, we unknowingly said a lot of things. Toughen up, don't be a wuss, or
it's like man up, isn't it? Like, oh, stop crying. And I find this a lot, and I was talking about it recently. So I think it was to one of my lad mates about like when we were a kid, like we were told like asking questions, or like, oh, stop asking questions. Like that became like a negative. So we kind of, as a generation, we kind of stopped. And I found from personal experience, it wasn't until I started asking questions again, like, why is my chest really tight? Like, why do I feel this way? Like, why can't I stop crying? Like, why is this happening? Until then, I started to get the answers that I needed. So I think it does come out, especially like men, like everyone got, and I'm not taking shots at women. I was raised by women, but everyone's like, oh, the woman's nagging, the woman's this, and this. It's not. It's because they're genuinely asking these questions, or they genuinely want to know, because that's how we learn. That's how we grow. So I'm not taking shots at the men either, because we are, I feel like it is a lot more difficult for men to kind of open up and show vulnerability. But at the same time, like, it shouldn't matter what gender you are.
yeah,
Vulnerability is vulnerability.
correct.
We're all
human.
showing vulnerability is literally what makes you stronger. So why would we not do it?
Yeah. I did a podcast with a guest that'll be coming out, and he talks about highly sensitive males. And I thought, oh, cool. We're recognizing emotional males, which all males are emotional. But now we're talking about males that are allowed to express it. And it's sad that I have to say you're allowed to in 2022. But, as I'm raising this 14-year-old grandson, I remember when he first came and I walked into his room and I said, how are you feeling? Or I said, do you want to talk? And he goes, why? What did I do? And I said, no, I just want to know what's going on? How are you feeling? What's happening in your life? And he goes, I've never really been asked that. And I'm like, heartbroken. I'm so glad he's with us now. But this is the thing. And even unknowingly, my parents said, my mom and dad's favorite saying, was, you made your bed, now lie in it. So my programming was, anything bad that happens to me is all my fault. I caused it.
Yeah.
I caused this thing. And so I went in life going into abusive narcissistic relationships thinking everything that they did to me I
It's happened, it's your
deserved.
fault.
Yep. And isn't that crazy?
Nope.
Just those little
Yeah.
things that parents do, we don't realize. We do not realize what we're doing. And it's not our fault. It's again carrying on these generations. But once we know, we have a choice. Then we can stop it. So we're not oblivious. We're not allowed to just say, oh, well, that's how I was raised. We're just going to keep doing it. But the change is
Break. Yeah.
that's
You need to
it.
break the cycle, because I feel like a lot of people don't realize how powerful they actually are. I'm not saying like they've got like the biggest muscles and this and the other, but like you don't realize just by kind of opening your mouth and kind of realizing actually that's not serving me. I don't agree with that, but you have the power to change it. It may not be as straightforward as changing it, but I guarantee like there is things you can do and give yourself a bit of a chance to make those changes. Because I go back to what I said earlier, like you deserve to be happy regardless of your job, relationship. It's the same as your mental health. If it's not serving like, or if any relationship or job is affecting your mental health in any way, shape, or form,
I think that is
change it.
That's you just touched on something that I think is probably the most effective thing in my life coaching with my clients. It's boundary setting. Because we a lot of us have just grown in this people pleasing mentality of if I make them happy, then I'll get what I want. And so we just kind of, how many times do you know anyone who's always apologizing, whether it was, it's like, and I've taught my clients, like, stop saying sorry and start saying thank you. So if you're late to meet someone like today, oh, I'm so sorry. No, say thank you, Maureen, for waiting, or thank you, or I appreciate your understanding. So it's a different feel. It's an empowering thing. And boundaries, man, when you haven't set boundaries and then you start setting boundaries, it's like, it gets addicting because you're like, no, that doesn't work for me. I say that what you said, that doesn't serve me. Or I say, I don't feel like it. That's my favorite one. I don't feel like it. Nobody can tell me whether I'm allowed to feel it or not.
You don't need to explain yourself to anyone.
Yes.
You realize, honestly, and that for me was probably the day when I've kind of realized that, especially when I learned what boundaries and everything were, because I was giving so much of myself away that there was never a chance I was going to find out who Taylor was, because there was pieces of him all over the place. So until I started setting boundaries and kind of saying to people, or getting rid of that guilt of like, if I didn't want to go somewhere, I didn't have to think of an excuse. If I didn't want to go, I was like, I'm just not feeling it. I don't want to be there, kind of thing. And if they have an issue with that, that's their issue, because I was putting myself first for the first time in probably like 20 years.
Yes.
And now I'm in the situation where I'm very focused, I'm very settled, I'm very happy with the people I have around me. And it wasn't until I realized how to set boundaries, or kind of learn to say no is actually okay.
Yes. And I found like past, friendships that I've now ended, they would lie or make excuses. They'll say, just tell them that I have this thing going on, or, I'll just say this. And I'm like, but I don't like that. I like honesty. And what I love, Taylor, is for you are suffocating under this cloud of obligation and expectation. And you said, I'm just going to let it keep raining and raining and raining. And eventually it just stifled you. And you're like, I can't do this anymore. I have nothing left to give you guys. So I'm going to disappoint not only myself, but I'm going to disappoint you, because I don't have enough to give if I don't give to myself first.
Yeah.
So a couple of questions that I ask every guest. We're going to lighten it up a little bit. You are down. What city do you live in?
Coventry. Yes. About an hour away from London. I feel like that's kind of where, like, everyone knows where London is.
Everybody knows. I know. I'm in Mesa, which is in the Phoenix suburbs. So I just say the same thing. It's like 20 minutes from Phoenix. So here we are. I have to let you know, though, we just did my DNA ancestry, and I found out I have a ton of Britain ties. So maybe we are brother and sister. Maybe
we're related.
Maybe we're cousins. I'm gonna.
But you know what's also weird? When you mentioned Boston, my job that I work at now are opening an office in Boston. So when you were like, oh, if you're ever
Synchronicities.
in Boston, I was like, like, who have you been speaking to? Because not many people
Right?
know this.
I'm it's just, people call it weird. I call it synchronized.
Yeah.
And what's meant to be will always be. You will be in front of me if you're supposed to be in front of me. But I have a question for you. You're marching down Coventry and you have a big old banner with 100,000 people behind you. What does your
Yeah.
banner say?
Wow. It
Yeah.
wouldn't say, oh wow. Just
Yeah.
just
Take that, Ed Sheeran. Take
yeah.
that.
Wow. Oh God. Do you know what? I think purely just because of the mentality that I'm in right now would be I'd rather do like you'd rather do something that you no. Oh no, what would it say? You'd rather regret something that you have done than what you haven't done.
I'd rather.
Regret something I have done than what I haven't. Because I'm in this real headspace now of like, I don't want to get to like my 70s or 80s if I'm lucky enough to live that long and sit there and be like, I should have done this. I had the opportunity to do this, but I didn't because I was scared. So I'd rather do it, regret it if I'm going to regret it, than not do it at all.
Yes, that is amazing. It's like saying I would rather have done it and failed than not done it and not known.
Yeah.
That is great. I never knew. So what have you I'll throw in two more questions. What is the one thing that you never knew that really is the biggest profound thing for you?
You know what? This is gonna sound really deep, but like I didn't realize that how important I actually was to me.
Yes.
Like I kind of had a feeling like, oh, like because of like you were saying earlier about like the people around you, they would say what you wanted to hear, or like I felt like, oh, people needed me. But it wasn't until like the podcast and everything that happened with my mom that I realized that, well, actually, Taylor, you do have a voice. You're able, and to be fair, even before the podcast, like making these kind of decisions, like with like top surgeons, and there was a stage like my sister's exams started the day before all this happened with my mom, and we got a little bit way through, and the doctor came to me and said, we're turning the life support machine off, there's nothing more we can do. And I literally begged this doctor to say, like, can you just keep it on until after my sister's exams, just so she has the best possible start, like, in life. Well, not that exams are all that important, but like, well, they are, but and he was like, right, I want the time and the date of the last exam, and then that's it. Then when they turned that life support machine off, she started breathing by herself. So it wasn't until that kind of moment and the podcast of realizing your voice does matters. Like it does matter. There's times when you probably don't think or you feel like you're not being heard. So that's the moment, like you stand on that box, you get that megaphone out because your opinion does matter.
Yeah. As I always say, the theme of every single podcast and every single storyteller is things changed when I realized I had a choice. And I know
Definitely.
that was so profound for me in my life because I remember saying, these are the cards I was dealt. I just got to deal with it. Maybe next lifetime it'll be this way. And then once I stopped that and realized, no. And then I realized.
It was Eminem. Eminem said it. Life is no Nintendo game.
Yes. You don't get to play game over and start over, right?
Exactly.
Wow. I love that. So as we end this on a very light note, what is your shameless self-indulgence?
Oh, Lego.
You do Lego. Oh my gosh. That fascinates me because I'm terrible at that kind of time space thing. Or the spatial.
Do you know what? It was the one thing that I found that when my anxiety is at an absolute high, the only thing that really kind of calms down, other than like kind of like podcasts or music, but if I need something like in front of me, like to kind of work with, it's Lego. Because literally in that moment, I'm not worried about anything else other than these little bricks that are in front of me.
Yes.
So
Therapy
yeah.
would call that distraction. And that is
Yeah.
exactly it's hyper focusing on something to get us to a neutral place. You know,
Yeah.
we can't jump from bad to good. We go to a neutral place. And I think creativity is so important. And I always talk about these. Everybody knows I make these little mini houses. And I'll show you an example. And I do the same thing. I zone out and I make these little mini houses. So this is a little mini
That is
brand.
brilliant.
Thank you. It's like a little mini office. See, it's got my logo and my books. And so I love doing these. And I totally get what you say. When you're doing Legos, it's like, that's all I'm focused on. My mind is not going crazy. And I'll be honest with you, I listen to podcasts while I do that, which is super cool.
Yeah.
And of course, you're now in the rotation on my podcast.
Thank
Although I have to say, like 90% of them are true crime. And so I'm kind of a crime.
No, I get it. I've got a lot of friends who can't fall to sleep unless they're listening to a crime documentary or like a murdered story.
I'm a crime junkie. Well, and I also have accreditation in criminal psychology and forensic psychology. So I love the why. I want to know. Yeah, I want to know the why. Not really the gore or anything, but I want to know the why, and I want to know the science. Like I want to be always like prepared and be situationally aware.
But you know what I love? Because there's probably a huge period of time, and I'm speaking from personal experience here, but I imagine with yourself as well, that being so open about like Lego or building those miniatures, like you felt like you probably couldn't tell people, or like you felt like, oh, well, they're probably going to laugh at me for that. Whereas again, when I found my voice and like the podcast and stuff like that, I was like, well, if this works for me, this might actually work for someone else. Yes. And it was like, well, actually, if this gets me through, it's like people who get kind of like the rip taken out of them because they make TikTok videos or they do TikTok dances. Like, if that gets you through the day, and if that puts a smile on your face and it gets you through those tough times, like there is not one person on this planet that is here or entitled to tell you that's the wrong thing to do.
I agree. Find your joy and don't let anybody steal it. And I don't care what it is, the smallest things, like find your win and balance it, in your day. I always tell my clients, you've got to balance this out. You got to get out in nature. You got to do some journaling or outlets. You got to do something physical. You need to do something creative. You need to do connection. I think every day we need to nurture our relationships with the people we love and care about. And we need to connect with people we don't. I always make it a goal to comment on like 10 people's things. Somebody's dog passed away. My doggies are like so important to me. Or someone's child just had a birthday, or someone's mom's having I love that. Just reach out. What is it? It takes 2 seconds to say happy birthday or find a funny little gif. That connection, we don't realize how important it is to our own mental health. So you're really doing your own.
Very true.
You're doing a service to yourself, because it always feels better when you're doing things for others. I think that's why volunteering and doing good in the world is important. Taylor, I adore you, my new brother from another country.
No, it is reciprocated. I didn't realize how much I needed this conversation today. So thank you for having me. My cheekbones are hurting. I'm like smiling.
That was success. That's a win right there. I always say you just gave me an hour of your life that you'll never get back. And I do not take that lightly. And I just feel it's such a beautiful gift to know you. You're not here by accident. Neither of us are here by accident or coincidence. It's meant to be. Tell us where to find you, what you have going on. How do you want people to come over to your podcast and just sell yourself, baby? Go yay, yay me. Let's do it.
I was about to say, before I get into that, yay us for this, because I'm feeling this like positive vibe at the moment. But yeah, I'm the usual Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you type in the Waffle Shop podcast, hopefully there's some familiar faces on there that you might recognize that I've had a waffle with, and it's kind of proof that regardless of whether you've won Grammys or you're standing on a like Olympic stages. We're all feeling these very human emotions. So start waffling about them, because it's changed my life for the better. So yeah, get involved.
You're amazing. And you might see yours truly's face on his podcast soon as well, because, we need
100%.
We need to waffle again. This just was not enough time. But all right, I love you to pieces. I really do. I just think you're super amazing, and thank you. So guys, go to his podcast. Definitely go listen to Waffle Shop Unfiltered and Waffle Shop, the Waffle Shop podcast on all platforms. If you have any comments or suggestions, want to be a guest on mine, you can go to lifecoachmaureen.com. And if you would like to purchase my books on Amazon, they are My Dog is More Enlightened Than I Am, and My Dog is My Relationship Coach. Both books will teach you how to be true to yourself and to follow your path and to do what serves you in this life, because that's what you're here for. And I'm grateful for all of you. Leave your 5-star reviews and share this podcast. Have an awesome day, everyone.
Thank you for tuning in to the I Never Knew podcast. If you found today's episode inspiring and educational, please be sure to follow, subscribe, and spread the word. The more people that join the Inc. community, the more it can develop and influence others as we work together for a healthier and brighter future. Until next time.